Welcome to Module 11. This module is on cognitive reframing. Now, in the last lesson, we explored co-regulation as a way to regulate others through our connection. And we saw how our presence, our tone, our rhythm, and our empathy can shift not only our own nervous systems, but the nervous system of our team. Today, we're going to turn to another layer of regulation, which is the mind, and one of my favorite areas to talk about. And specifically, we're going to talk about how we interpret our experiences and the way that we think about things like stress, challenge, or conflict is going to directly shape our behavior and how our nervous system responds. And so if our brain perceives a situation as a threat, then our body is going to respond with that fight, flight, or freeze response. And if our brain instead can interpret it as a manageable or growth-oriented aspect, then our body will respond with more steadiness and more presence. Now, this process that we're going to talk about is called cognitive reframing. And I want to be really clear here that it's not about ignoring stress or pretending that everything is fine. It is not about that at all. It is about shifting the perspectives that we have in our brain in ways that are going to reduce unnecessary threat so that we can open up space for both clarity and growth. Now, as we move forward with this, I want you to understand that everything that we think is going to shape our physiological reaction. And so our nervous system doesn't just respond to external events. It is also actively responding to our interpretation of those events. And so if you have two individuals who receive critical feedback, one might think, oh, this is proof that I'm failing. And their nervous system is going to react with anxiety and shame. Where if you have another person who says, yep, this is uncomfortable, but it is information that I need to improve and I can use it to my advantage, then that person's nervous system is going to maybe still activate a little bit, but it's going to become calmer more quickly because the meaning that they've associated it with is different, right? They're choosing to look at it from the perspective of, I need to grow, and in order to do that, I need to fix this, right? And if you can just shift your mindset to a more growth-oriented or growth-inspired mindset, then it's going to help you navigate your nervous system much more effectively. Now, cognitive reframing is what is going to help us create interpretations that support our regulation instead of something that is going to escalate our stress. And in order to kind of dive in, we want to talk a little bit about what is cognitive reframing and what it isn't. And when we talk about cognitive reframing, it is about noticing your thought patterns and questioning whether or not those thought patterns are accurate or helpful. And as part of that, you will also explore alternative interpretations that are going to help you reduce the likelihood that your body's going to respond as a threat, and it's going to help you to increase your agency. Now, reframing is not about toxic positivity. It's not about denial or trying to force yourself to see everything as perfectly fine and you know, the universe is forcing me to do this, so I have to do it kind of a thing. It is about nuance and choice, right? And recognizing that we have a choice in the way that we look at things, in the way that we perceive things, the way that we interpret things. And it's not about blind optimism and positivity. And so let's talk about a couple forms of cognitive reframing. If you've ever worked with a coach or you've ever worked with a therapist, you've probably done some of these cognitive reframing techniques. We're going to talk about 4 different ones here. The first one is how to reframe from a threat to a challenge, how to zoom out of the current situations to see the bigger picture, then naming our actual strengths and our resources, and getting curious instead of passing judgment. And I've got some additional resources on this. It's got more ways to reframe. One of my favorite ones, we're not going to dive into it here, but I will put the resource in the resources below, is every time you have a negative thought to reassociate it with 3 positive, truthful statements. And so I'll throw that one in there too. But there are all different kinds of ways that you can do that. We're going to cover these ones. These ones are the most generic. But let's start with reframing from threat to a challenge. And basically what we want you to do with this is we want you to shift your thoughts from this is overwhelming or this is a challenge to this will stretch me and help me grow, and I know that I have the resources to handle it. And what this is going to do is this is going to reduce your body's sense of danger and help to increase your resilience and clarity as you start to navigate that. Right? So if your brain is thinking, oh, this is overwhelming, it's such a challenge, I'm never going to be able to get it, then that's what you're going to get when you step into that situation. And so if you can reframe your thoughts of, yes, this might be challenging, but it is also an opportunity for me to continue in my leadership evolution to get to the place that I want to be, then you're setting yourself up for much more success. Now, the zooming out, this is just about expanding your perspective, right? So often we get caught in our minds and we think that what is happening right now in this moment is everything, right? It is the totality of the situation, when the reality is it's just a tiny little blip in our timeline. And so if we can pull ourselves back away from that specific moment, away from that specific time, and see it in the bigger picture, that is going to help us to be able to regulate. And so if we have the perspective of this conflict feels really huge and overwhelming right now, but we say to ourselves, but in the context of a year, it's going to seem like such a small turning point, right? And I have so many examples of this in my life where like the thing that I thought was going to be the moment for me that was going to end everything ended up being such a tiny little speck on my timeline, right? And so we really just want you to see the perspective of the bigger picture. And if you can train your brain to say, regardless of what happens in this moment, it is not going to define me and who I am and how I am, then it opens you up to more possibilities. And the next one is naming our strengths and our resources. This one is really, really important. And all we want you to do with this one is to remind yourself of the unique skills and abilities that you have. And so even if something is challenging, you can tell yourself that you've done hard things before and that you have the tools and the resources and the support to navigate the circumstance. And this is just going to reinforce safety and competence for you as you're navigating that, right? And the reality is that almost everyone has faced hard things. They have the tools to navigate it, and they have to focus in on what are the tools that they have to help them to get from A to B. And finally, curiosity over judgment. This is such a big one, right? Curiosity is what is going to open our nervous system up instead of shutting it down. And in so many cases, we automatically jump to judgment because whether it's our own mind or our own ego or our own emotions and socializations, we want to judge other people. And if we can shift our mind from I can't believe that this is happening. This is only happening to me, and I'm the only person suffering. Then it'll help us to get to a much better state. So instead of saying that, shifting to, I wonder what I am supposed to learn from this, or how this can help me in my leadership journey. By choosing curiosity over doom and disgrace and overwhelm, you're going to train your body and your nervous system to pause, to see the circumstance for what it is, and to see forward in terms of some sort of growth-inspired path on what you're supposed to learn or how you're supposed to learn it or how it can support you in the future once you have learned it. Right? Now, when we talk about this from a leadership perspective, reframing basically is a tool that we can use to help create space and meaning for our teams, especially when we're navigating something like change across the organization. The way that we frame that is going to leave a lasting impact on our people. And so if we're framing change, whatever it is, as negative and overwhelming and complicated, then our teams are going to see it as negative, overwhelming, and complicated, right? But if we can reframe that for them as it's going to be tough, we're going to navigate it together, and we're going to come out stronger on the other side, then those are the things that they're going to take away from that process. And so the way that we frame challenges as leaders is going to shape how our teams perceive them. And if we can frame them as a way of growth or inspiration or solvability or something along those lines, then it's going to help our team respond in a more regulated and cohesive way. And I want to just again reiterate here that it's not about sugarcoating, right? And so change is hard and it's inevitable. And so you're not going to stand in front of people and tell them that this process is not going to be the things that you know that it is going to be. But it's about acknowledging it in a different way while also offering a perspective that is about growth and possibility. And this balance is what is going to help build trust and resilience. And I think we're going to do a practical example here. So we'll do a guided framing practice and some reflection prompts, and then we'll close out. And so let's do a reframing practice. I'll walk you through it. There's going to be a couple of steps, but we're going to recall a stressful situation. We're going to talk about the story behind it. We're going to search for the impact. We're going to reframe. We're going to notice the shift, and then we'll do the reflection prompts. And so again, whatever space you feel most calm, sitting, laying, however you want to move into this, go ahead and get into that space now. And I want you to think of a recent leadership or personal moment that felt stressful for you. And I want you to hold it in your mind. I want you to take a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to explore the thoughts that came up for you during that leadership moment. Were you thinking that it was an impossible situation? Maybe that you weren't good enough or you didn't have the skill set that you needed? Whatever it was. And if you have pen and paper, you can write it down, what that story was. And a lot of times people get stuck on this when they don't know what that story is. And so often I sit with people and they're like, I'm not telling myself any kind of story. Like, this person is just being X, Y, and Z. And recently, actually, I'll share a really quick example. I just presented at a conference and someone came up to me and shared about how someone in their leadership team didn't care about their programs and wasn't supporting them and didn't make time. And, she shared her story, and I asked her, what is the story that you're telling yourself about this person? And she's like, I don't know. Like, he's just not, he doesn't care. And I was like, does he care? Because, you shared with me that he sent you a message and he said, I care about this. I want to do this, but right now we don't have time because we have these other things. Like, here's what's preventing me from doing this for you right now. But you're still telling yourself the story that he doesn't care. So you have to let go of that story that he doesn't care, because he has told you that he cares and that he wants to find time. He just can't do it now. And so we have to be able to recognize that story. What is the story that we're telling ourselves beneath the emotions of that circumstance, beneath the perceptions that you've developed about the people that you're working with, and how that is impacting you and your decisions. And then we want you to check in on the impact. How did those thoughts affect your body in that moment? Did it specifically come out in any kind of physiological reaction, whether it's your heart rate increasing, quickening of your breath, tightening in your chest, some other form of tension? And I want you to notice the connection between your thought and how your nervous system responds. And from there, I want you to answer the question, what is an alternative way to interpret this situation? And we all know that there is an infinite number of ways to interpret the exact same situation. And so as you're getting caught in your story about whatever it is, just like this person was getting caught in the story that her leadership team didn't care, what is an alternative interpretation of the events? And for this other person, it was they literally did not have the time to dedicate because of the upcoming inspection and the way that things were going to be handled. And if you can acknowledge that other way of interpretation, then that gives you leverage to kind of respond back to that situation or that circumstance in a way that is helpful and practical, right? Then this person was able to go back and just to say, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. I realize that this inspection is really important, and I know that we've got limited time between now and then. And to frame her program as a critical element of that inspection, which required the specific time and energy to make sure that the inspection went well, right? So she had to recognize that this was important. It was at the top of this person's list. And in order for her to make her program stand out in that, she had to link it to what this person was thinking about and how they were thinking about it, right? So finding alternate interpretations is what's going to help you to reshape your thoughts and your actions. And I want you to choose a reframe that feels the most truthful and grounding for you. And I want you to consider how you can approach the situation differently with this alternate interpretation. And as you hold that reframe and as you think about how you're going to navigate that circumstance, either in future situations or in a future moment with the same circumstance, I want you to notice what happens in your body. Even a small release of something is meaningful. And so if you notice something about the way that you were perceiving it, or the story that you were telling yourself that you hadn't seen before, or if another perspective just opened up an area that you now feel like you have actionable insight on, I want you to think about that and reflect on that. And as you move forward, I want you to think about, what are the specific stories that you consistently tell yourself when you're stressed? And how do those stories shape your nervous system? Does it escalate your tension, or does it restore your balance? And which one of the strategies that we've talked about feel most natural Do you prefer challenging the orientation, zooming out, naming your strengths, or using curiosity over judgment? And finally, as a leader, how can you frame the challenges that your team is facing so that you can approach them more consciously? And as you explore those last questions, we'll go ahead and close out with a reminder that cognitive reframing is what shows us that our regulation is not just about our breath and our body and our environment, but it's also about how we make meaning of our thoughts. Our thoughts are going to shape how we hold space for others and how our nervous system is going to react. And the perspectives that we choose for our team and our organizations are going to shape what our team thinks about those challenges. So as you move forward, I want you to notice the stories that you tell yourself in stressful moments. And I want you to actively experiment with shifting your thoughts. And I want you to do this one at a time. So don't try to take on too many thoughts. I want you to pick one thought that comes to you regularly that is directly impacting your nervous system regulation. And I want you to explore shifting that thought or that story in practice. And I want you to notice how your nervous system responds as you're navigating shifting that thought or that dynamic. And make sure to note it in your journal so you have a good foundation to work with in terms of exploring some of your thoughts, reframing some of your thoughts, and so on. With that, we'll go ahead and close out. And in the next module, we are going to talk about integrating everything that we have learned so far. And we're going to actually create a personalized regulation toolkit for you, combining all of the things that we've talked about: breath, sound, movement, touch, grounding, visualization, co-regulation, and reframing. So we're going to talk about how to fit these practices to your unique nervous system and your leadership context. So I hope that you will join me there.